Welcome back to the STEM Swag podcast. I'm your host, Temple, and as you know, I'm connecting you with the coolest women in STEM on season 1. And today's guest is no different. I love her so much. I got a chance to work with her multiple times. Stephanie Espy is a graduate of MIT and the author of STEM Gems, How 44 Women Shine in Science, Technology, Engineering, and Mathematics, and How You Can Too. She's also the creator of STEM Gems Club, an initiative to bring STEM careers and role models to girls and young women in communities and schools across the world. Stephanie's mission is to empower the next generation of STEM leaders by inspiring, mentoring, and coaching them in STEM content and careers. She strives to fulfill this mission through her work with Math SP and STEM Gems. Please welcome Ms. Stephanie Espy to the stage.
Hi, Temple. Thank you so much for the introduction.
Yes, I'm so excited to have you on this podcast for people out there to know what you do and who you are. So let's go ahead and jump right into that. Let them know what specifically you do. We heard the bio. I know what you do, but tell the audience.
I am a STEM educator. I started my career as a chemical engineer, and working in that space, I realized there wasn't enough women, especially women of color, in engineering. And so I decided to create solutions to help expose and excite and empower more girls to go into careers that are underrepresented by women, such as chemical engineering.
Yes, absolutely. That's such amazing work and such an inspiration to help get girls that out there to know what they're talking about. So one question that I have, what was that journey like to get to where you are now? To being a chemical engineer, what was college experience like and now doing what you do?
Temple, I will say it has been a windy road. And I think that's important to know because it's not just like a straight path for anyone. It's not like, okay, point A, point B, straight line. It's usually like a lot of twists and turns along the way. So when I finished high school, my goal was to study chemical engineering. That part I knew. I love math. I love chemistry. I decided to apply to different colleges with the intent of majoring in chemical engineering. So that held true. Like you said, I went to MIT. I studied all the chemistry classes, the math classes, the engineering classes. After I finished college, I felt like I needed more. So I went to graduate school also for chemical engineering at UC Berkeley and, did research and, had my first sort of opportunity to really publish different papers based on my research. That was a big deal. And that was my path. Chemical engineering was my path. It wasn't until I got into grad school and got into jobs and internships and, that I started to see this gender gap, this big lack of women of color in STEM and more generally women in STEM, at least in my experiences. So I just remember the feeling of like, why am I the only one? Like where are the other women? And so, of course, in the roles that I had, it was women in other parts of the company. But in my work, in my line of work, what I was doing, I was the only one or one of very few. And so that just kind of hit me like a brick and it never really left me. And so, kind of fast forward some years, I decided to go to business school and I got an MBA from Emory. And then that was around the point I was like, okay, how do I combine engineering with business? I felt like those business skills were important to sort of like go higher within a corporate environment. And so I felt like those skills were important. But now I'm like, okay, now how do I want to use these skills combined with the skills that I gained from working as an engineer? And ultimately what I decided to do after a lot of conversations and getting advice and sitting down and talking to family and talking to career coaches and really just trying to assess what my opportunities were, I decided to start Math SP. So that was my initial sort of segue into entrepreneurship and into helping to solve this problem of why aren't there more girls and people of color in these spaces, and how can I help?
Yes.
How can I expose and just make sure that at least the opportunities and the options are very clear
Yeah.
Because then it's like, okay, well, I know that it exists, but it's not for me. That's totally fine. But to not know it exists, to not know much about it, to not know any one of the
Yeah.
fields, not have any experience with these fields is sort of like, well, you can't be what you can't see, right? So that was sort of like,
Exactly.
my
Yes.
mission was to help people to see it so they could decide if they wanted to be it or not.
Yes. Yeah. I always say that. I was so happy you brought that up. One of the things I always say is that a lot of people, especially kids, they believe that if they can't see it, then they can't be it. So I encourage people, be that first person for somebody that's like you, that's urging, that's wanting a person that's in STEM and wanting a person to represent them, but they don't have this representation. Be that first to do it. Now, you said so much in that last part, and I want to get into all of it really. But starting off, what was college life like at MIT? One, that's a hard school to get in. It's a very, very smart school as well. But there's also, I know that there has to be a lack of diversity too.
Yeah, for sure. So, yes, it was everything you just said is true. It is, of course, I mean, I'm sure for every college is a lot of work. You have to have good study skills, good habits in general, right? So, I was very disciplined. I had great study skills. I was able to find a balance, right, between getting the work done, going to class, doing all the problem sets, because every class that I took was a STEM based class, right? So my core classes were like chemistry, physics, calculus, computer science, you know, basically all your math and sciences. There were humanities as well, but primarily STEM. So I had a lot, I had problem sets in every class. So it was a lot of keeping up with assignments, getting the work done. But also balancing that with making sure that I have outlets, making sure I'm enjoying myself and make sure I'm making friends and having, making memories and involved with clubs and all those as well. So I had to keep the balance. You could definitely hide in your room or hide in the library and just study all day, right? It's very easy to do that, but it's not healthy, right? So just making sure I had a balance was really, really important to me. The Black community there, the community that I built with not only Black students, but also just like women students as well, is strong, it's solid. So I sought out different organizations on campus, clubs, in order to make sure I had the community that I wanted. I felt like it was important. So I felt very supported. Of course, there were moments I was like, oh my God, like, this is so stressful. And just, we all had those moments. But then you breathe and you realize it's just a grade, it's just a class, you get through it. And so, those moments definitely existed, but more so a lot of support, very good friends. I had a great experience.
What was that prep in high school to get you into MIT and then having all those STEM classes? I love science. One thing though, those classes that work can be a little difficult. I took calculus last year as a sophomore. Oh, one of the hardest things ever. So what was that prep in high school for college?
I mean, everything you just said. So taking a lot of science classes in high school, a lot of math classes in high school, just maximizing your high school curriculum with math and science. So for me, I didn't take calculus until I was a senior in high school. I mean, this is, of course, years ago. So it was, your traditional algebra, geometry, trigonometry, pre-calc and then calc. And so, and then, of course, you take your biology, your physical science, your chemistry, your physics, so you just try to maximize what your school has to offer and just, get an exposure to all types of math and science.
Chemical engineering, like what is that? We hear the two words. When you combine them, what do we get?
Right. So the way I like to explain chemical engineering on a very, low level is, okay, imagine being a chemist and working in a lab and creating new things, right? Mixing chemicals, creating new things, new products. And a very easy example is like hair products, right? We all put things in our hair, different shampoos and conditioners and soaps and, oils or whatnot. So someone is creating the right mixture of chemicals that we, use for our hair, our skin, our body. And so imagine being a chemist and working in a lab and creating, this very exciting product. But that's just one batch, right?
Right.
Almost like cooking dinner for one person or one family. Now imagine cooking dinner or creating this product for 100,000 people, right? Going from one of something to thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of units of something. That you need a process for that, right? You need to have a way to make the bigger batches, and that is really the essence of a chemical engineer. It's figuring out how to go from one and create the process of making a lot of that something.
Okay, that really helped me understand it a lot more, the way you put that. I want to switch topics for a little bit. Can we talk about Math SP and STEM gems?
So Math SP is really about academic coaching in STEM subjects. Pairing a student with a coach, and that coach is going to be their mentor and their sort of like facilitator and helping them facilitate through or go through these different classes. And then also test prep coaching, because in order for Temple to achieve her goals, there are different testing requirements for colleges and different and beyond. So hoping to master the content, because there's a lot of math and science on these tests as well.
What do you find the importance of mentorship? A lot of people I've talked to, especially a lot of podcast guests, every single one of them has brought up mentorship. So why do you deem that as important?
Because so what you end up ultimately doing in your life, is all influenced by the people that you meet along the way, right? Your parents, your family members, your teachers, like people that you encounter shape your trajectory, your journey. And so whether they're formal mentors or informal mentors, they're still people you look up to or people you don't look up to, but they are impacting your journey, your life, right? So intentionally putting a person in your life to impact your life and help guide you in a certain path is hugely critical. It's very important, especially if you don't have the type of mentorship in your home, in your family. So there's so many of us that don't have parents who are STEM professionals, who are engineers and scientists right within, in your home or even in your family, that if you don't have that, how else are you going to learn about or really understand the different opportunities that exist in STEM? So if you have a family that is full of lawyers, for example, you're more inclined to consider that field, to go into law. If you have family members who are into politics, you're more inclined to go into politics. If you have family members who are doctors, you're more inclined to go into medicine. It's just the people around you impact you, right? So mentorship is intentional, putting someone in your life who's intentionally going to help you go down a certain path that you may not otherwise have easy access to within your immediate, surroundings. And that's why it's so important.
Yes, absolutely. I believe, especially after hearing so many people say it, mentorship is really key to success. And one thing that I really like that you said is that no matter who the person is, whether it was a negative or positive impact, they still impacted your life and pushed you on the trail that you're on right now. And it's like, if you just saw a stranger out on the street and something about them inspired you, you don't know who they are, they don't know who you are, but they still impacted your life. Mm-hmm. So intentionally putting somebody in your life for the purpose of improving it, I guess, is really good. Going into your next thing, STEM gems.
Yes. So Math SP is for boys and girls, right? We start in middle school. It's for anyone and everyone who needs that foundation and who can learn from someone who's a professional in the area. Now, STEM Gem is specific to girls, because what I learned through Math SP was, this is great. We're doing good work. We're matching students with professionals. We're seeing good results, but it wasn't enough girls. So when I think back to that original sort of like the experiences I had, and again, wanting to see more women in particular, Math SP was a good first step, but I felt like I needed a community of just girls. And so that's when I actually wrote the book. So it started with a book. It wasn't intended to be another business. It wasn't. It was like, I had this idea to write a book to highlight careers in STEM and to highlight women in those careers. That was the big idea. Okay, I want to showcase careers that people have never thought about, that you don't turn on the television and automatically see, right?
Yeah.
It's just not mainstream. It's not common. You may have a Netflix show buried within your, your history that may have a main character who's an engineer, but it's not a common thing to see, right? Yeah. So I wanted to highlight careers that are lesser known, and I wanted to introduce women in those careers who are what I call the Beyonce of their field, right? Taylor Swift, whoever is your favorite artist,
the big pop star, yes.
In their field, they are it, but their field is behind the scenes. You don't even know what they're doing. They're behind the curtain, so they're not visible. I want to increase their visibility. So that's what I did. I did a lot of research. I brainstormed careers, and then I researched women in those careers, and then I did a lot of outreach to interview all the women. And I settled on these 44 careers and these 44 role models who share their story about how they got into this area of STEM that is underrepresented by women and by specifically women of color. So that was like the big idea. So that all that happened, it was probably almost 4 years from start to finish when it was actually published. And then now it's available. So now it's like, okay, this is great. I have this product. So I have this is what it looks like. I have this product. This is great, but I don't want it to just sit on somebody's shelf and collect dust. And it's so much in here that is begging for programs, begging for community, begging for conversation. There's just too much good stuff in here for it to just sit and not have conversation around. So that's when I created the club that you mentioned. So I was like, this needs to be in the schools, and there needs to be a community of girls that can come together, that can read from this book and then have a conversation about what they're reading, about what they're learning about. And so that's when the clubs came around. So I was like, okay, this is good. Almost like any traditional book club, right? I've been in a book club with some of my college friends for years. So we read a book, we sit down and we talk about it. We have discussions. Same thing here. You read it, you sit and you talk, you have discussions. There's curriculum, there's guides that go along with it. So you can download the guides and you can answer the questions together. And there's some next steps and all these different things you can do around the book. So that was like step 2, was building the curriculum in the clubs. Then step 3, or the next thing that came about, was like, okay, how do I bring these girls together? Because now there's all these different groups across that are popping up at different schools. How do I bring them together and introduce them to some of the women in the book face to face, or other women as well, not just the ones in the book, but also other women who are doing amazing things. So that's when I created the summit, Women Empowering Girls STEM Gym Summit. So that's an in-person summit where now we have all these girls in a room with parents, with educators, and you have all these amazing women who are sharing and connecting and mentoring and all the things inspiring in this summit. So that was the next phase. It's like we need to bring this together, and we need to be in the same room and just inspire these girls. And so that came. And then the next and sort of the last program was the summer camp. So I had all these ideas for really cool hands-on activities. So I said, okay, for each of these 44 careers, I need to create an activity that will help someone to understand what is chemical engineering, right? What is that, right? What is it? I don't know what it is. Well, we designed a very simple activity that if you enjoy this activity, perhaps chemical engineering could be the career for you. So it's a very simple introduction to each of the careers that are featured in the book, that connect to that career, but also connect to that woman who is highlighted in the book.
Yes, I love all of that. It was so much that you said, and all of it was really important. I love it. That's why I admire you so much, why I wanted to have you on here, because the podcast is about exposing people to careers that they don't know about, and exposing them to women in those specific careers that are doing irregular things and things that aren't mainstream. So that entire piece, shout out STEM Gym, just starting out from a book and becoming this whole big thing that probably has inspired so many people within the next generation of STEM leaders.
Absolutely. And along those lines, Temple, I just want to compliment you for even having this podcast. A podcast is an idea that I had for myself. And it's just, again, it was one of those things that I just never got around to doing. Yeah. But I love that you, as a young person, still in high school yourself, is is bringing in different women and connecting with your peers. So I think you are the perfect person to have this platform, and I'm happy to be in support. I think is much needed, and I think you are very relatable. So I hope that your podcast takes off, and that thank you for inspiring the next generation as well.
Yes, thank you so much. So finishing that off, I told you that we were going to play a game. So it's about time for show and tell. So excited for this. All right. So I'm going to show you a picture.
Okay.
You're going to tell me a little bit about it. And some of these may throw you off a little bit. So I'm going to go.
Oh, goodness. Yeah, that's me. It looks like I'm talking to a group of students. I don't remember the exact location of this group of students, but I am an educator for sure. I do a lot of speaking opportunities in front of groups, and so this looks like I was very into whatever I was saying. I'm like caught in action of saying something, and then you see the one guy in the background who's like all in. So that's good.
Yeah. Yes. I think that picture's from 2013, so 10 years ago.
Oh gosh. Yeah, I mean, time flies.
All right. Okay. Next picture. I'm excited for this one.
That is me in high school, Temple. I was probably your age. I was in the marching band and symphonic band, and I played the flute, and that was a huge part of my life. I went to a high school that had over 300 people in our bands. Our band was still to this day they're like that.
Yeah.
Shout out to Southwest DeKalb High School class of '97. But yeah, that was my band picture, and I found that picture at my parents' house recently, and I was like, oh my god, it just brought back all these memories. But yeah, band was a huge part of how I got into MIT. So we talked about MIT and how I got in. So part of college applications is showing that exhibiting leadership skills, and I was not only that was I just a musician learning to play, but I also was a leader in the band. I was section leader of the flute section, and it's just a huge part of my high school sort of time in high school. So I even wrote essays about being in the band and my experiences as a leader in the band. So that picture is heartwarming to me.
Question I have is, can you dance with all the rhythm being in the band? Southwest DeKalb, all those schools, they love to get a little hype, do a little dance.
Oh, definitely got hype for sure. And yes, all of those dance routines, absolutely. That was a fun part. That's the fun part of being in the band. You play, but you also have fun.
Okay. Next picture.
Aw, I love this picture. Those identical twins melted my heart when I met them. I think I was at a school for this picture. I can't remember the name of the school. It's been a while. But I was definitely there to talk to a group of students. And when I saw these identical twins, I was just like, oh, you guys are adorable. And yeah, so we took that photo. But there were in a STEM Gyms club. So I was visiting one of our STEM Gyms clubs, which was there was probably a middle school, I'm guessing. And they were in the club. And so,
all right, Miss Stephanie, thank you so much for joining me on this podcast. Before we log off, there's one thing that I get all my guests to say, and it's STEM Girl Swag, because I'm STEM Girl Swag, and you definitely are. So say it for us.
STEM Girl Swag.
Yes. Thank you so much. To find Miss Stephanie, please follow her on Instagram. So where to find her if you have any questions about mentorship, her camps, what she does, chemical engineering, how to get into MIT, please go and contact her. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me, Temple.
Guys, subscribe, like, and comment to see more women like Miss Stephanie. Follow me on Instagram at JustTemple. For more information, go to justtemple.com, and I'll see you next time.